So we open us in prayer, please. And just go ahead and connect when you can.
Okay.
Nice big deep breath. Peace. Be still. As we come to this present moment, we give great thanks for the relationships we have with each other and for the technology and non-technology that connects us all. All of these golden threads that run between us are such wonderful, wonderful blessings to all of us. Thank you, God. Thank you for our teacher. Thank you for everything we are gleaning from these classes, whether it relates or not. It's all growth. God.
All right. And Donna, I emailed you the PowerPoint for today.
Boy.
I got it. Thank you.
So, like I said, I left a picture of Tracy, so I put that on there too. And this is and I didn't email this to you because I didn't download it. I just printed it. It's in the it's called Charles Fillmore Chronological at unity.org. So if you do a Google search, put Charles Fillmore chronology. Thank you.
Okay.
That would
Thank you.
Coming out.
Some of them just stick.
So I need to go make an extra copy of this one because I didn't know Jenny was going to be here. So
Surprise.
I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourself.
Oh, by the way, we are planning a little play, hopefully tomorrow, based on Robinson and that. Would you like to be, I know we don't have to write paper. I know, I heard that. We'll just let me know how it unfolds and what I can do. All right. We're gonna talk about it at dinner tonight, I think, a little bit, maybe at lunch a little, so. And I'm not gonna be at either one. I have a conference for Kentucky one at lunch, and then my friend, who's the officer, does off-duty at the Archdiocese, so I'm picking up Subway.
Jesus.
So I'm good. That's what we're doing. And I can do that. Okay. I'm already halfway there.
So the chronology of Charles, you can kind of move them together, but it gives you some really good information, like where things happened and stuff like that. So something that we'll keep referring back to. So some of this some of it all weaves together, when you're using one main narrative. So we're in the spirit of the Fillmores, that chapter. So their dream, if we remember correctly, was not personal advancement, not personal self-aggrandizement, not personal wealth, not any of those things. Their dream was the advancement of the movement and humankind, spiritual unfoldment. And they just let everything else take care of itself from that, which was not necessarily back in those days, was not necessarily, you had a lot of hucksters who would take advantage of the situations and people's. There seemed to be a yearning and a seeking for something, which is why there were so many different schools of thought out there. And some of them were very honorable and in good morals and virtues, and some of them were seeking fame and fortune and the P.T. Barnums of the world. Like today. There's life just goes in circles. It's that there's the a sucker born every minute, and I can sell you something, and you do get some of that today, which is I have the latest healing cure, or I have the latest 6 steps, I have the latest diet program that if you follow,
I have the biggest airplane, and I have the most prosperity, so you should send me all your money.
Right. Well, there's and so, but there's a lot of that, and some of it still comes from the right place. Is I have a diet plan that I think, well, but again, nothing external to you is going to save you, and yet people still wanted to give their power to somebody, and that's why the film wars constantly would, it's part of the unity culture, is to put it back onto you. What do you say? What is your spirit within you telling you? I mean, the story of them cutting out the pages and putting it on their arm because their arm had pain. They probably had arthritis, or maybe they had something happen to them on the farm or something, as if there's something. And we still seek to give our power to somebody else. I remember one time, Reverend Rob, when I was first thinking of going towards ministry, it's like about 2003, was Rob still there? Rob was still there.
Yeah.
Because Pat came in 2015. So Rob, maybe 2002. So I'm seeking, why did I not die? What is mine to do? Where am I being called to? And he said, well, you're probably, being called to ministry if God has to be in any of that. And, we went back and forth on that. And then I kept asking him questions, and he kept returning my question with a question. Well, what do you think? Instead of giving me the answer. Until in frustration one day, I said, I'm going to go become a Lutheran because they're very happy to tell me what to think. Like today, in Film Wars time, people were looking for something, but it's always looking for something outside them. And they were very clear in all their preaching and teaching is this is about individual spiritual unfoldment and the unfoldment of humankind. So they would have probably said mankind. But as we evolve, we include women in unfoldment. You're not just in on my wake as I'll drag you forward.
You'll have that work out
do you
for
feel
you.
like you're being pulled in my wake?
Not usually.
Yeah. The only time they're pulled in my wake is when we're awake. And that, and part of that is that they, in the very early stages, when you came in, the stories were, they would come to the office in very earliest stages when they set up their office, and people were waiting at the door for Charles and Myrtle, who met them personally. And that continued on. I could walk upstairs from the classrooms and walk into Connie Fillmore Ray's office at any time and sit down with her, and she would pray with me. I can call on the phone today if they're in their office and talk to the president of the Union Worldwide Ministries directly. There's no layers between us. We are all involved. So, so that was part of their passion. In fact, I would guess, it's kind of embedded between the lines, that Charles and Myrtle were kind of, as time went on and things became more complicated and they grew, it was like, Donna, I'm pouting. I can't meet with everybody. I can't answer the phone for everybody that's calling anymore. And that's kind of like, but there was still that wanting to, that individual connection. So, which is interesting. So, and it's interesting to read in the book that Charles loved to tell stories in his sermons, and I found that interesting. And if I was writing a paper, unlike the 5 of you who are going to do a skit so you don't have to write anything for me, thank you, God, but you're still welcome to write something for me, too, if you want. was that Charles doesn't use a narrative approach in his writing. His speaking style and his writing style are completely different. He doesn't use any storytelling to kind of guide you into why do I want to hear this, which is what they tell you nowadays, is weave some stories in there, which also brings it more personal. But I guess his speaking style was very much that way. I was listening to some of his old tapes, and people are laughing and it's just chuckling all the time, and very unusual. I'm like, wow, it wasn't in his writing at all. But then I realized probably not in my writing either. I tend to write very serious, and I tend to not be quite as serious when I'm speaking. So, and the other thing I thought was interesting is that he personified, both of them personified, though I imagine just he, because I can't imagine anybody criticizing Myrtle. That would be like criticizing your grandmother. You might criticize grandfather, but you don't criticize grandmother. It's like it would just fall on deaf ears, and nobody would even. In fact, I can guarantee it, because if you even say something against Myrtle, like maybe you started, you can't even say that still today, because you will be slapped down by about a half a dozen people coming to her defense, a bunch of people who never met her, and she's more like the icon. So, but when people would criticize Charles, or the one story, did anybody read the stuff for today? The person who tried to steal their employees and steal their database, he just said, well, go work for him, go work for us. I imagine he said, no, you can't have the database. I started thinking, if I had somebody come into my office and try to steal our database, would I be quite so reasonable? Would you be quite so reasonable if somebody tried to steal your employees and tried to steal you? You're an employer. You have employees. If you gave somebody avenue to express themselves and then they tried to steal your employees and steal your customer base so that they could market a similar program, what would you do?
I had a very pointed conversation with the person trying to take the employees, and the contractor who had access to all of my people was just let go because there's a non-compete in my contract.
Right.
So, wow. I wish there was.
That's a big step.
Mm-hmm.
Wishing them well is at least holding that, don't hold the anger. So I love the line, resist not evil.
Yeah.
Resist not. It's almost like he personified the Buddhist non-attachment before Buddhists became popular in the United States. For so many things, he seemingly, the more you read about him, and I knew this, though I never studied Charles a lot. It just wasn't something that interested me, because I believe, like Charles said, is don't give your power to me. And we're now not in the 30s, we're now in the 2000s. I want to study somebody who understands quantum theory. I want to study somebody who, that wasn't a suggestion it might be, that's well developed, so I more Eric Butterworth and stuff, but he was so far ahead that the world had to catch up to him, that he was there intuitively. He just kind of got there through spirit.
Well, that was a Buddha. Buddha told his followers the same thing. Don't believe it just because I said it.
Right.
You have to go and find your own truth.
Right. And then they turned him into a deity and said, but Buddha said this. It's interesting when you have people in the unity movement. Are you there, Donna?
She disappeared. But she did say
I'm here. My camera keeps going in and out.
Okay, just want to make sure you're still there. If you have anything to say, just scream out and I'll shut up. So
I will do it.
It's one of the problems when you're using people online. I don't know if you got something to say, because if you're raising your hand and you're not on camera, I can't see it. So
Right.
if you got something, just say it. Where were we at? What was I saying? The squirrels got a hold of it.
We were talking about how he and Buddha both said, go, find your own truth. Don't
Well,
believe
it's interesting so Charles said, don't believe it because I said it. Always be willing to constant study, constantly learning new things, constantly evolving. And people in his classes would read him something of his that he wrote, like in one of his magazines. He'd say, where did you get that? Well, you said it. Really? I said that? Yeah, it says it right here. Yeah, I'm thinking different than that now. And I'm just thinking the look on people's faces. I've been in classes, for me, because I take that to heart. I like to do the same type of class, more Socratic, answering questions, and I'll assert something, and over the course of time, and it happened in ministerial school, and it's happened in SEE classes with people. Somebody will say something, I'll go, wow, I never thought of it that way. I like that. I'm going to take that instead. I'm going to change my mind. But you're the teacher. Yeah, but I hadn't thought of that. That's why you do it, so that you go, oh, that's a great way of thinking about that. I never thought of that, And it can be confusing when we always think of someone being the expert. But I think that was Charles' point, is quit trying to turn somebody else into the expert. Challenge them. There's the story in the book where he invited the speaker in, and he was doing this, and she said, well, I see my friend Charles is disagreeing with what I'm saying, so they invited him up on the stage, and them debated the topic. And that became the talk instead of listening to her. And from that, you could discern your own, so.
I feel that way a lot about my writing, Reverend Ray, because when I write, sometimes it's totally from ego. Sometimes it's out of anger, frustration. I was telling somebody else that my writing started very young because, for many reasons, but I wasn't, some of us were not allowed really to express ourselves as children. I realized there's a lot of past generations like that. So for me, when I started writing, it was my way of expressing. And I did freeform. I mean, just as fast as I could. Mm-hmm. And even still to this day, I'll read back over writing and I'll think, that's not even how I begin to feel. Right. And then I'll read over some others and I'll think, wow, that's so, it's like just because I write it or just because it comes through me, I may not even, like even when it's really good stuff, I don't even get the lesson, but it came through me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, like I said, with me teaching prosperity classes, I'm going to keep teaching because eventually I'm going to understand it. So I'll keep working at it. So the interesting thing you said there was many of us as children weren't allowed to express ourselves. So just for curious, how many of us as adults feel that we were allowed to express ourselves? I'm not seeing a lot of hands raised in the room. So it wasn't just as children that we felt stifled and kind of not able to do that. So hopefully Unity gives you a little bit more of that freedom and stuff. So
yes, and I do it now. I mean, it gets me in trouble sometimes, but I do it anyway. And sometimes it's, I try to keep the emotions to the writing because that allows me to purge them because I'm just developing them. I've never been allowed to have them, so I'm just giving myself the right.
Yep. As a guy, I can really appreciate that. When I was at the Village going to school, and Robert Brummett was, for those of us who know Robert, the pastoral care teacher for probably 25 years. Every Unity minister in the field right now probably had him as a pastoral counseling, pastoral care engineer, practicing Buddhist, unity minister. Very odd combination, you know. And he was saying something about feelings, and I said, well, Robert, when I came in, I had 2, and now I got 4. I've doubled my feelings.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, as a guy, we're a lot. I'm not even sure guys are allowed to be happy. That joyfulness. We're allowed to be angry. You can express that because you don't want to get too overwhelmed because then you're told to, you know, settle down. You know, so, serious.
Oh,
Oh
yeah, and anger was something I was never allowed. Anger was not allowed. I guess I probably hit 30 before I started saying, wow, I have anger. Yeah, so I can relate.
I was probably in my 50s before I figured out that I had something other than anger. So,
you locked up, I lost it. What'd you say?
I said I was probably in my 50s before I figured out I had something other than anger.
Yeah.
So one of the things I liked about the Fillmores is they were very gregarious, and even in Myrtle's non-cooking. So when Rickard designed her home, he did design it without a kitchen because that's what she had always talked about. And Charles
Her fairy home.
What?
Her fairy home with
Her
no
fairy
kitchen.
home with no, and the fairy home's still there. It's still there. The fairy home with no kitchen, and Charles would say something to the effect of, well, eventually we'll go ahead and design a kitchen in, and Myrtle was like, well, not necessarily so. You know, not as long as Mom's alive, we're not. And so,
Well, they died to see me.
right. And so, you know, and the mother loved that part of her life, you know. And I'm just imagining. So here I'm using the power of imagination. Here's a woman abandoned by her husband in the backwaters of Minnesota with a bunch of savage white people and savage Indians and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, here she's brought into this loving environment with these stream of people who are just very interested and passionate, and she gets to be the matriarch to them all, feeding them. I'm the grandmother to an entire movement. You know, if Myrtle's the feminine presence, Mary was the grandmother to everybody, you know. So, and you can just, having grown up with a mother who we had the house that everybody came to, and there was always something cooking, and there was always, because I lived in a Catholic neighborhood. So most of the neighbors were like, get the damn hell out of the house, not bring all your friends, because they had like 6 and 10 and 12 and 15 kids, and it was more like, get them out. So they were all over to my house where it was just me and my brother, and my mom was happy with this constant stream, you know, from the front door to the back door, eating cookies, bread and stuff. And I can just imagine her house, Mary's house, being like that with this smells and food. And like you said, she died in March of 31, and Myrtle died in October of 31.
And they were only 11 years difference in age, so
Right.
she must have been quite a bit older than Charles.
She was 10 years older than Charles. So, yeah. And if you notice in here, they moved both their facilities and their home a lot. They moved in one 4-year period 5 times. They moved their
Yeah,
I'm quite up
offices.
with that.
What?
I'm quite up with that.
Yes. Yes. You know, because they were learning to get settled. So
What did Charles and the boys do when their cook died?
Yeah, right.
you know,
Because it was
the
3
boys were
years.
older,
Mhm.
so it was really just Charles. And Charles had which actually was Myrtle's nurse, and kind of like nurse secretary, kind of more like you were with Warren, more like helping out. Because I'm kind of guessing that Mary was not going to be nursemaid by anybody. I'm just imagining, or Myrtle being nursemaid by anybody. Somebody there to help them do the stuff that they were having struggle to do, who ended up being Charles's next wife.
Do you need to change this
Oh,
line?
yes. Sorry.
Where was the story about this? Still on the database.
It's like
Oh,
one
here.
paragraph.
Page 97. I did not remember that.
What's that?
The story about the database and peeps.
Yeah, it's in there someplace. So the interesting thing with Myrtle and with Charles when he married Cora, that would have been like Mary Magdalene dying and Jesus marrying somebody else. It's like there was this icon. He couldn't live on grounds. His house with Cora is actually off grounds down, I can't remember the name of the road. It's you go down it to go to Target and the IGA store. They weren't allowed to live on grounds because people had such a risk. You're not going to bring that woman into the ferry house, are you? So they had a little farmhouse off. In fact, a friend of mine, Patty, who took my position in Golden Valley, she used to live in Charles's house. It's owned by the village, but it's not on the property. So we get very attached, even in unity, to things, as if Charles was supposed to what was he supposed to do? You know?
I had the same reaction, honestly, when I realized that he married him. He did what?
That was just two months after she died.
What? That was like 3 years.
3 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, I got you. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, because Cora, so Myrtle was Myrtle. I'm my own person. I'm my own idea. I have my own passions. I'm over here, and they're working together towards the same thing, but I have mine. Cora, it's all Charles all the time. Her focus was all Charles, so that a lot of the books that came out were because Cora took on the job of editing his papers and putting them together to release them. And she was a very spiritual person herself. I think she's been much maligned by the Unity movement because she wasn't Myrtle, as if Myrtle's supposed to live she was supposed to regenerate and live forever.
Or they both died at the same moment.
And they both died at the same, or Charles should just shrivel up and not have a personal life and, whatever. So, but Cora was very important in the legacy and in
Wouldn't have happened.
What?
We might not have had the writings if she hadn't.
Somebody might have come along. She spent a lot of time in the archives. She spent a lot of time digging out Keep a True Lens. Smashing Power of the Mind. Genesis one. I can't remember the name of that one. Mysteries of Genesis. And a couple other. Plus, she wrote a companion piece for the 12 Powers that is more of a meditation on the 12 Powers that allows for those of us who struggle with Charles and some of his language to have the 12 Powers actually make sense. So.
When it says that he and Cora lived in separate residences in L.A., does that mean that they lived in separate residences or they lived in two different places together?
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
I don't know. And I have a feeling this wasn't sometimes when you get older people and they get married, this is not a physical marriage. This is companionship. We get along.
That's not true for all old people who get married.
I said some, not all. Hey, I just got my AARP card, so let's
be real here.
Let's get back up, Boogaloo. So I not everyone. I'm just saying sometimes, and I'm getting more Moses after he's had his mountaintop experience when the Queen of Egypt says when he found his people, I lost them. When he found his God, you lost them. That his relationship with his wife became more of a companionship, and we're on the same path together, but it wasn't necessarily physical. I was trying to figure out how to say that, not my usual way. So,
I saw that struggle.
yeah, it's like, that's where that old longshoreman in my head goes. Like, no, that's not appropriate for a minister. You can't say it like that. Well, how can you say that?
I think that's why I can't be a minister.
Right.
Mm-mm.
What's it?
She doesn't have the edit.
Oh, the edit.
I'm like a bubblegum machine. Whatever comes out of the head, out in the mouth, pops out on the tongue. You get what you see is what you get.
Yeah. So
That's what makes people relatable, I think. That's what makes everybody be able to relate to you.
and you know what? Sometimes you get used to the fact that if there's more than two, where two or people are gathered, there I am. There's also the potential for people to misinterpret what you said.
Always,
Yeah.
always.
And that's when you get to practice non-resistance and just love people exactly where they are. So, of course, I've never had that happen to me. That's a theory. Right. So the beginning of their thing is that, and it's partly out of their own experiences, is that they didn't believe in a religion that says endure the pain. Suffering is redemptive. Christ suffered, so we should suffer too joyfully because our reward is someplace other than where we are. They believe that life should be joyful. I'm guessing in the strength finder that you would do, their primary would be joy. That would be their number one. Joy would be
Zest.
what?
Zest.
Zest.
Yeah.
Yes. Zest for life and joy. That you didn't have to pay a price for salvation. The salvation was already assured, and so life was to be lived, not endured. So they wouldn't have necessarily embraced. The only two things that are assured in life are death and taxes, you know, and the rest of it, woe is me through the middle of it, you know. Well, if you think about it, it wasn't too much before Charles and Myrtle started their ministry that people were trying to convince the slaves that it was okay because their reward was going to be later. So they just needed to endure slavery and whatever slavery was because the reward would come in the afterlife. It's always a good way for somebody who has to sell somebody who doesn't have why it's okay that they don't have because my reward is only temporary. Yours was assured, you know.
Which is just
A bunch of crap.
Yeah, well, I mean, and especially because a lot of people who held slaves didn't think they were human anyway, so
Right.
they didn't have.
But it was a good way to manipulate.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so, well, and according to the Constitution, they weren't fully human.
Was it 1/5?
1/5. Yeah. Wasn't until the 14th Amendment that they were given full human status. It was nice that they were given full human status.
That was just the men.
Sure, still.
It took a while to get through.
Wasn't that just the men, even at that point?
Well, yeah, of course. Well, that's right, and that's why it's again. So New Thought was so amazing, is because many of the founders of New Thought are the women. Like I said, New Thought in some ways was like decades, if not centuries, ahead of where religion was. Still is today, you know, in many cases. Unity is, our CEO of the world headquarters is a female. CEO of Unity Ministries is a female. You know, so yeah, they were way ahead.
So we do have full human status now as females. Is that what you're saying, Reverend Ray?
I was thinking back in the 1890s, you didn't. You didn't.
I know.
You have the right to, you know, there was a lot of things that you were denied. Like when Myrtle went to school, she couldn't go to a 4-year college. She had to take a 1-year special course for women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you didn't. And yet in New Thought, women were at the forefront of almost all the movements.
It's crazy to look back. I mean, it's only really recently that we were even allowed the vote in government.
Yeah.
I mean, what year was that? It's not been that long ago.
1920s. I don't remember the date, but the 1920s.
Yeah. It's not even, it's right at 100 years, I think.
What?
Was never approved?
What?
Oh,
Yes, it was.
It was.
No,
Okay,
it
because
was
I kept
ratified.
hearing that was never really.
No, it was
Okay.
ratified.
Good.
It only made it through the Senate by one vote.
What's that?
The right,
You think
no,
of
the
Trump
right
would
to,
take us
the right to vote.
Yes.
There was the big deal. It only made it through the Senate by one vote to be ratified. Now, you don't have equal rights, because the Equal Rights Amendment didn't pass.
Are you kidding?
The Equal
No,
Rights
it's never
Amendment never
ratified.
passed.
Yeah, right? One dead.
Long dead.
That's
And,
why they want to-
and they had the reason why is because they had a limitation on timing on it. It only had 7 years instead of just open. So,
Yeah, the only place we really don't have equal rights now is soccer, I think.
That's,
Yeah.
Tell Barry. Education.
yeah, that's the soccer, basketball, any sport, you still get paid 60% less for the same job. You know?
Catholic Church.
Yeah. That was total sarcasm, because even in what I do, you know, as a female, I'm paid half of what the guys are paid.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
so the other thing is, the other thing which I really honored is, and I think that's kind of been lost at the world headquarters, because the people in charge are not unity people. They're not, a lot of them are just business people who've been brought in to run the thing, is that Charles and Myrtle always saw themselves as just another worker. So Myrtle would greet you at the door down at the Tracy Avenue and give you a tour of the place. It's like having the Pope give you the tour of the Vatican. You know, it's like things like that don't happen. You have an assistant who would help you. Unless, of course, you're a big donor, then you might get that. Unity World Headquarters still has a lot of that we're just servants, that we're just here to be, you know, with you. I don't necessarily know that all of Unity ministers believe that, but that's my belief, that they still hold to that. We're just we're all in this together. In spiral dynamics, I think Unity World Headquarters tends to be a little red, you know, and Unity Worldwide Ministries tends to be really green, in that we're all in this together. It's a collaborative, you know, I'm no better than you, I just happen to be in this position. So when I go to GLRC, there I am, my first GLRC as an associate minister, just out of school, still trying to figure out, the only reason I got a job was because I knew Reverend Pat and he hired me. You know, I'm thinking, somebody's going to pull back the curtain and go, there's no here. There's no wizard here. He's just pulling strings. And if I can just fake it long enough, I'll get by. And there, Reverend Pat, the chairman of the board, Charlotte Shelton, the CEO of Unity World Headquarters, and the CEO of Unity Worldwide Ministries, and they're listening to me. I'm like, okay, there's got to be something wrong with this picture, but I'll just fake it till I make it. You know, so, yeah. So I still think that a lot of that is still prevalent today at times. Is that right? Yep. And they still, and I remember that when I was at the village, they called him Papa Charlie. And when Connie Fillmore Ray would talk to us, she says, yeah, Papa Charlie and Mama Myrtle would, you know, and it wasn't that she was saying, because that's what I call it, because that's what everybody called it. You know, it was like, I'm not you, I'm not this icon, I'm just like you, I'm just, you know, so approachable and humble. And really tried to work that see good in everything. See the good even in the stuff that doesn't seem so good to you. Then they have this nice thing, and they still do, well, they did it when I was there in 2011. Bless the mail. So they're their own post office. They have their own postal code. And so, and they still get lots of mail going out, lots of mail coming in. And the whole, everybody who's working that day gets around, they hold hands, and they bless the mail as it comes in, which is pretty cool. They don't know what's in there, you know. They're just blessing everything, which is really a really interesting process. And as students, we were invited to come down for the blessing of the mail, which was always kind of fun. Which is why I'm a little sad that there's not going to be a residency program, because you'll get to miss out on some of those things. So.
Bless our mail at home.
You could. Well, when we do the counting in the morning on Mondays,
Yeah.
they take time and they bless whatever there. They haven't counted it yet, so that they keep the ego up. They're just blessing the abundance that continues to pour in, and we're going to see it advancing the movement.
So they know for sure there will not be a residency?
That's what they pretty much have guaranteed. Partly because, I'm thinking it's partly because worldwide, Uni World Headquarters, which is the village, may be saying, you can do a residency all you want, but where are you going to do it? Because you don't have a place for people to live anymore. You don't have a place for people to stay anymore. They can't, unless they can afford to stay in a hotel for semesters at a time. I mean, what did I pay for the little cottage?
It wasn't a lot.
Yeah, like
$125 for your
A month.
room, and then
Yeah.
you had access to the kitchen and bathroom.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just guessing the logistics of it would be difficult. So,
It seems like they would want to create the excitement,
right.
or the coming together, the sharing,
Well, they'll probably do it more like they do for field licensing and for the LUTs, is you'll come in for a week at a time, so you still get connected to your students and stuff. But there's something about residency, and there's, life changes, and like all things, those things that we're attached to, we resist.
right.
And the more I'm attached, the more I'm going to resist it. And so with the residency program, there's going to be a number of people who get to have a Good Friday experience, because they can resist it all they want, but it's going to do what it does, whether or not you want it or not. They get to do what they're going to do. So.
Do you think they were feeling competition from the other place where Gwen is getting hers? Most of hers has been online, and they were feeling like people are going there because it's less expensive, and they don't have to come on
And they don't have to
site.
disrupt their lives.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
I think there's a couple things. I think they were feeling a little bit of that. They were also feeling that there was less of a pull for people to have to disrupt their lives to become ministers. Is that necessary? When we only have one place to go to, we're not like some of the seminaries where there's 30 seminaries to go to, so you can probably stay at home. I don't know what they were feeling. I'm thinking that they're looking at going forward 2016, the drive is more towards using mobile platforms to do the education, and like I was telling Robin this morning, like all things, there's going to be a learning curve for them. What platform do you use? How do you keep interaction going? Do you use GoToMeetings? Do you do Skype? Do you do one-on-one interactions? Is it all, because there's different platforms, so God only knows what they're doing. Some of this stuff will be lost. When I was there, it used to be when I was there, everybody would show up at 7 o'clock in the morning. There would probably be 50 of us there at 7 o'clock in the morning for a morning silent unity meditation. And then after the crash and they started cutting back, it was, well, you can do that, but you got to do it on your own time, and your shift starts at 7. So they kind of did away with it, and then there'd be like 6 of us standing in the lobby holding hands during the meditation. You know, it used to be the 11 o'clock was a big, the students would all help do the 11 o'clock service. You'd sign up and you'd get to do the 11 o'clock service, and then that kind of started drifting away because, you know, you only got 45 minutes for lunch, and 11 o'clock is right during your lunch break, and, you know, and so that kind of dwindled too. So things change. Per chaplain programs morph into something else. And those things that we are very attached to, like Charles, try to change Charles's language in one of his books to re-edit it and update it to modern 2016 language and see what you'll get. It would be, if you want to write a book, but you don't touch the Bibles. You know, you don't get to write the Bible because it doesn't make any sense anymore. You know, so. In fact, I even had a teacher who said, "Don't rewrite the Bible; just write your own book." Okay, so that's the problem. Is we get attached to things, and even though a lot of the language that Charles uses is no longer, you know, even the language of denial, you have to spend more time explaining what a denial is.
Yes.
Before you can ever get to what an affirmation is. So, you know. What do you mean you're denying you have a problem? Of course you have a problem. Okay. So one of the things that they did was they had faith in themselves and their calling, so that inspired others to have faith in themselves and their calling. I'd actually give you that if it would work. There you go. Don is back. So, which I like. It was, don't do something because I say to do it. What do you do? What do you want? What's your calling? Where are you going? You know, and then support them in that. And then the other one was, in all things, go to source. All things, go to source. Quit looking to outside gurus and the, you know, who put out the latest book that Hay House is promoting. You know, who's the latest author that's doing the tour of Unity movement, Unity churches that's going to speak. You know, it's not that they're not good, because to hear something in a different way can always inspire you. Go, oh, I never thought of it that way. Now it makes sense. So it's not, so lifelong learner, yes. But in the end, take it all and go to source. And I love it when he says, don't believe it because I said it. Take it to source. And if it rings true, then put it into your life, because it's only in action that you know whether or not it really makes any sense. So, and what did he say? In the book he said he would spend up to 6 hours a day in prayer. And I love the fact that he said in the beginning it was excruciating. It was almost painful to do it. But he did it anyhow. And there was stories, he would sit on the front porch. This was after Myrtle died, probably he's in his 90s, and he'd be in his rocking chair, and the kids would all say, no, Myrtle was probably still alive, because it was when the kids were alive, and they would all say, why is your dad asleep on the porch? And they said, he's not asleep, he's praying. And that would be like, well, that don't look like no praying I ever seen done, because that's not, you know, because their version of meditation, their version of praying, which was before meditation, mindfulness, nobody even knew what Zen was in the West, is the silence. The silence was go to the silence, because that's where source is. Cool. Any questions so far? All right. Take 10.
Take 10. All right.
Take 10.
Kathy, I said that one funny thing she forgot, she said it was an awful night because Ben was coughing all night.
Okay, we're restarting.
you know,
Does yoga.
Inclusive.
yes, and statesman-like.
Pete's family, in the meantime, were saying, is this really going to happen in the United States?
I know, and it's weird.
And I'm like, yes, I may have to see it.
All right. So we're on to the healing work of Charles.
All right.
And I said that, so a lot of this stuff is redundant because he wraps it back through, you know, but that they didn't start out to start a church. They didn't start out to start a movement. They didn't even start out to start a healing practice. They didn't say, ooh, Val has a Reiki class, so I'm going to go learn Reiki and I'm going to become a Reiki master and open a healing center. They said, I'm going to die or I'm in chronic pain and I'd like something to be different than that. And we're open to their own personal transformation. And from that, you know, because I guarantee that Charles had absolutely no intention of doing any of this. He was selling real estate. He was being a entrepreneur and a developer, you know. And Myrtle just didn't want to die. So for somebody who, you know, I had no intention. And their story becomes my story because I had no intention of being a minister. I didn't even know that unity existed. All I know is that I didn't want to die. And so from that, I had to keep saying yes because that was my deal. As if God deals.
Yeah.
But in my mind, God deals because I don't have any evidence that he doesn't because so far he, she, and it has withheld their part of the bargain. Because mine was good news and bad news. This is a direct quote from a cardiac surgeon, from a transplant surgeon. Good news and bad news. The good news is that you need a heart transplant. The bad news is we don't give hearts to drunks. And then went on to explain what he meant by that. And he left, and I'm in a big-ass room, not about 3/4 of the size of this room, cardiac unit, 25 years ago. So, you know, it's like wires everywhere, beep, 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 beep.
Stressful.
You know, pissed off because the bulls are in their three-peat, and I'm not able to, I don't have anybody to watch it with, so I had an orderly watch the three-peat with me. He'd come in and watch it. So he's supposed to be doing his job, and he said, well, I'll watch the game with you because you need somebody. So, and I laid there and said, if you don't kill me out loud, not knowing who I was talking to, if you don't kill me, I'll do whatever you ask. So I had to keep saying yes with whatever I heard was the answer. And at one point it said, you're supposed to be a minister. When I got back up off the floor from laughing.
Well, how did you find unity?
Part of the yes was that I had to quit drinking and doing drugs, which was probably a good thing even if I wasn't going to die. And I went to a disability group. And when about 2.5 years in, they told me my heart had healed too much, so I was no longer available for a transplant. So I went to a cardiac stress test. And the tech thought that I was a plant to see if he was doing the test correctly because he was fairly new because he says, you don't have a cardiac problem. So my heart had gone from 12, which is called the rejection factor. You may know the rejection factor. It's anything under 20, you're on the heart transplant list. Anything under 15, you're critical and go to the top. So I was at 12. And I had gone from 12 to 33 in 2 years. So they took me off the idea of having the list. And then I transitioned to an AA meeting. And in the AA meeting, one of the things in AA is, if you want what I got, then do what I do. Don't think about it because you've already proven that you can't think, because otherwise you wouldn't have to be in this stupid meeting. So if you want what I got, do what I do. So I looked around and I saw that everybody who seemed to have what I wanted, which was peace, serenity, had their wits about them, had something about them. The it that you can't describe. They had all done this training. So I said, I want to do the training. And so I did the training, and as I progressed through the trainings, one of my friends, who's now one of my best friends, said, the third training was a 10-week leadership program, and in that you do a letter of accomplishment. You write a letter in the life wheel, basically, is what you completed, not what you're gonna. You write it in an affirmation. So my first experience of affirmations, you write what I have done, and then the coaches coach you to that so that you complete your life wheel before you're completed in that 10 weeks. And one of them was to find a church that could help me understand this higher power that made no sense to me because I didn't have a framework for it. So I'm turning my life and will over to this what. So, and my friend was on the board and said, why don't you come and visit my church? I said, okay, because I was going to go visit a church every week. I figured I'd end up Methodist or Unitarian or something. I didn't know. And I didn't know unity existed. Didn't know what it was. And Rob said to the gathered that God doesn't forgive you. God only loves you. I'm like, well, I found my home. I don't need to look any farther, and I've been there ever since. Because I heard that this is where you need to be.
Isn't it funny how just one statement, just like Myrtle, and you're in like Flint.
And there was probably 250 people that day, and most of them probably don't remember that he made that statement. Most of them probably don't even remember if they were there that day. You know, I don't know if I was there that day, but to me it's as clear as day. Walked out on that and told Rob that I was very happy that he had this nice individual conversation with me and invited all these other people to be part of it.
Oh.
So, but in that, kind of the metaphor for us is that if we do our work, what the purpose ends up being from it can be something entirely different. We just do what we're called to do and then be open to what possibilities come. Shelley came here bringing Warren as her job.
It just felt like work when I first came here because so much of what we do is stuff that I do with meditation and affirmations and just so much of it was the same and none of the rituals were here. It didn't feel like a religion.
Right. Until eventually it shifted somewhere along the line.
So we just put out the resume and the job that we fill, jobs, whatever shows up.
Right. Well, Mike Dooley says, stay out of the deadly house. He has this, in his matrix, he has over here is what. We can call it what or why. You know, what is the thing that most entices you? You know, there could be 3 or 4 things. You know, mine was freedom. You know, kind of like the Southwest Airlines, freedom to move around the world. Mine was freedom and a couple other things. And then as you move this way, it's what does that look like? And so then you start describing what it is, which is more of the goal. So I want this, and I want this, and I'd like this. And then you get over here, which is, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, you don't want to be over there. That's God's job. Your job's over here. So that's kind of the, I got my resume and I just throw it out there.
Fling it out
and stay moving. And stay taking action. Stay in the action and in the openness. And what did you say?
He's coming to Louisville. Where?
Yeah, I know. It's going to be the weekend that we're in Minneapolis.
It's the weekend I'm in Farmington.
Yeah.
Where's it going to be?
I
It's gonna
almost
be
thought
Cincinnati and Louisville.
I almost thought about canceling so I could do his day retreat. But he'll be back.
Yeah, and he was going to offer if
Who is that?
Mike Dooley.
Group discounts. So
Where's it going to be?
I don't
He's
know.
going to be in Cincinnati one day and Louisville the next.
Do you have the date?
I believe 14th.
wham. Well, and in that, my friend Peter has been following up Julie for years. My friend Peter came out of very evangelical, very conservative, out of Norway.
His family was actually
One of the founders, and they actually threw him out because his son was a drug addict, and he would speak from the pulpit.
Oh, we met him.
Yeah,
He was in the class. He was
Yeah.
in the SEE class.
and he went to see Mike Dooley, who had rented our church, and then said, "Wow, any church that would let Mike Dooley in, maybe I should check this place out." And now he's one of my best friends. So the idea is, and in their healing work, Myrtle obviously was a very early convert from one moment. And I think that Myrtle must have always been open that there was something else, because otherwise she wouldn't have been hearing this, and she wouldn't have kept going to all these things that they were doing.
Well, you can tell that just from the letter she wrote to Charles when she left Texas, and talking about how she had found God in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else was so in tune with what the speakers were saying, and she was all over the moss.
Yeah. And even it says here on this one, July 1887, they had already received a certificate of instructions and principles in Christian Science from the normal class graduate of the Massachusetts Metaphysical College of Boston. And they had a dream. That was before her healing actually occurred. So she was already open to that kind of pull. And then she had that, she had the experience in 1886, but had the healing occur in 1888. So, they were open that whole time, because otherwise you can't hear stuff if you're not open to it. You can say anything you want, but if you can't hear it, when the woman who came to Easter service last year, not this year, but the year before, because her friend was very in love with this place and wanted to share it, and thought that because there were female ushers and a woman up on stage, that we're all going to hell. She couldn't hear what I was saying from that point on. She couldn't hear my words. Nothing I was going to say at that moment was going to get in, because she wasn't open to hearing it. We're all heretics. We're already burning, and so you have to be open before you can hear. Kind of like I had to have been, if I'd have gone to Rob's church when I first got out of the hospital, I wouldn't have been able to hear him yet, because I hadn't come face to face with the idea of that there was forgiveness work to be done. I don't hold grudges against anybody. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I don't have any anger. I'm not holding any grudges against those bastards who fired me. I don't know what you're talking about. So Charles was a little bit of a waiter, like he said. For him, in the beginning, it was cold, it was scientific, and for me, I probably would have hit early on with that attitude, because when you're being very cold and scientific about it, it's very difficult for anything to get in. But he stayed at it and then felt, and actually in the earlier chapter, he said it started coming to him when he realized his dreams were actually, what is it, when you, pointing to the future.
Yeah, they were revelatory.
Revelatory.
Yeah, and he realized that he was actually, because he was still in resistance to the communication directly from God, God was circumventing him and giving him the information in his dreams.
It was given to him in his dreams. And so that almost was his, and he had to be open to be able to remember the dream enough to go, oh, I had already dreamed this. This is exactly what, and then realize that there was this channel. By the end of his life, he said and this could be part of the unity myth, that his leg had actually lengthened. He was almost even. His legs were almost even because I guess one was 2 to 3 inches shorter than the other one because it stopped growing after he broke his hip, and the doctors almost killed him. So his leg, he had taken his brace off and he had left his cane. So he didn't actually get the pain that he used to. So healing happens other time other than right now. No, it happens when it happens. So, and the other thing is different than the traditional Christian Science of Mary Baker Eddy. He never said, don't go to doctors. He never said, as Rob used to say, if you say God's in everything, then God's in the doctor.
Yeah.
God's in the technology. God's in the wisdom that knows how to use the technology. But then he said, always remember that the technology is only assisting God in doing what God's already doing, which is healing you. So if you've ever read a DM4, not the DM4, the one with the drugs, the drug.
PDR.
PDR. If you ever read it, because we used to have one for when I worked in adult foster care, because you'd have to look up. My clients would go to the doctors, and they were just, you have to look up. Part of your training, and part of the training you give the staff was, you have to look up and tell me what every med does. And oftentimes, they don't know that if you do that, take this and this dosage, this will happen and you'll be better. They don't know. They just, Course in Miracles says, don't stop taking the magic pill if you think the magic pill does something. But just remember that the magic pill is not healing you. If you think the aspirin is curing your headache, then take the aspirin. But the aspirin doesn't cure your headache. What cures your headache is the fact that you now allow God to do what God does. And if you give your power, if you want to give your power to a little magic pill, then go ahead. So right now I give my power to a little dialysis machine. And it goes. What's the hours? Heavy I say. Oh.
The tickets available.
Yeah,
They're $195 ahead of time, $245 for Dooley.
Oh, for Dooley?
And it's at the Louisville Marriott, and a vegetarian box lunch is included.
And they are, if there's a group that wants to go, they do have group discounts. I think it's like up to 20% if you have 10 or more going. So.
And I don't know what he's doing on this tour. A lot of times he'll do his matrix.
That's what he's doing. And if you pay $300, almost $400, you can have a private time. Or meeting of the minds, as he calls it, a private meeting of the minds.
Because we always want to give our power to Mike Dooley.
Yeah.
But he's got some good teaching that is just different enough that I can hear him in a way that I can't hear some others. So.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you all, you can sign up to get a daily message.
Yep.
From the universe if
Yeah.
you haven't done that.
Oh yeah.
Yes, if you haven't signed up to get a message from the universe, it's a good daily message.
It is.
It's just a sweet way of being told how magnificent you are every morning. It's a great way to wake up. Did anybody tell you that the 10,000 angels have lined up and they can't even cheer because they're so in awe of you? Thank you, God. So back to Charles. Charles and Myrtle's never said don't go to the doctors. And they never encourage anybody not to. They would say go to Source and do what Source is telling you to do. And doctors are included in that. There was a time, and I can't remember if it was James Dillett Freeman or if it was Eric Butterworth. There was a time when you would literally get criticized if you were wearing glasses. That people in the ministerial program were afraid to wear their glasses because that would show as if there is a archetype of the perfect human rather than the perfections in our diversity. So the Android app that says we're all one, we're not all the same. So people wouldn't wear their glasses even if they needed to because they were afraid of being criticized. And I can't remember if it was James Dillard Freeman when he was the head of Silent Unity or if it was Eric Butterworth in, and he says, could I cure my eyes of the infirmity of having to wear glasses? Of course I could. I have better things to do with my time, my prayer time, when there's a perfectly good set of glasses that lets me see fine. And again, part of the mythology, do we know if any of this is true? And what I understood, what the story was, after he said that in the class, a bunch of people reached into their pocket, pulled their glasses on and put them on, and no one said anything. Because one of the icons said, wearing glasses isn't a bad thing. Somebody's figured out how to let you see well. You can cure it, but you don't have to cure everything when there's perfectly easy ways of moving and doing it. So, and the other reason why Charles said he didn't necessarily think that doctors were necessary, a la Mary Baker Eddy. All healing comes from God. But the difference was, he said, everybody's at their own stage of development. Everybody's where they're at, and you will use the story in the book was when he was in an accident, and the doctor approached him. He said, no, that's okay. Go elsewhere. I'll take care of this myself, and healed himself within a couple of days of whatever happened to him. So, as my teacher used to say, believe in God's healing, and if you break your foot, put a cast on it. You know, don't pretend that the cast is healing your foot. The healing is coming from God as it moves through, and be amazed when they take the cast off of how much stronger it is because you did your prayer work. But, you know, so, and this really aligns with current teachings that we do in Unity, like a Course in Miracles. Don't assume that somebody's where they're not, because the Course says to tell somebody that they don't have to go to a doctor would elicit more fear than just letting them go to the doctor. Just remember where the healing comes from. And so they had their Silent Unity prayer service every morning at 11 a.m., and they called it a healing service. I have my teleprompter and Robin, so she keeps telling me when I need this sort of stuff. And I'd be fine if I could do this, but you can't have the two screens up at the same time. And they did a healing service on Wednesday evening, because Wednesday evening is church night.
How did that tradition ever start?
Everybody, I don't know, because it's the midweek between Sunday and Sunday. So Sunday, and that's probably, they probably did it on Wednesday because that's church. I mean, if Southern Baptist, Methodist, Wednesday's considered church night. But I don't know where that started.
It's your midweek infusion.
It's your midweek infusion, because you can't possibly get there without God, and you need that bridge of us to be there for you. So I don't think it was that. I think they just picked the night of the week. But, you know, but they also grew, you know, she grew up in that system where Wednesday night was church night. So they probably just continued on with that. And I don't think
the Wednesday night dinners.
There would be another good one. I'll write a paper of the metaphysics of a Wednesday night service, of why Wednesday night instead of Tuesday night. So, well, I'm sorry, what did you say about?
Oh, I said because I grew up Baptist as well,
Right.
and that the Wednesday night dinners were great because the women in the church would come together in a big church kitchen.
And,
Good food.
and the history of that might have been, could quite possibly be a bit, especially in more rural America, with after the Revolutionary or when there wasn't a lot of churches. It was itinerant ministries, and it might have been when the minister could have gone to. And there also was a lot of poverty, so it might have been a day where everybody comes together and everybody shares of their bounties, almost like a metaphor of the 5,000 fishes, 5,000 loaves and fishes is, for some, like here, is it might have been the only really good meal for some of these people when they come in from all come together. Could have been a community gathering. Who knows? It's like hard to say.
Ours were always on Thursday night.
But you're Catholic, so you're with
No.
Oh, I thought you were. What were you?
That was at the Christian church.
Which Christian church was?
Yeah, we're a Christian church.
Oh, okay. So you're just weird.
I guess they were.
Yeah, Mass every day in the Catholic Church.
Oh, mercy.
I have a little card. You all may have seen it. It's a joke. Jesus is giving out the loaves and the fishes, and somebody raises their hand and says, "Is it gluten-free?" And another person says, "Does that fish have mercury?" And all these questions about, what he's wanting to give out.
Yeah, the interesting. So, side story on the loaves and fishes. So, when I went to talk to my brother a few years ago, when I told him I was going to go to ministerial school, and after he quit laughing, he had become Catholic to get married, and when he got divorced, he ended up paying the money to get to have his marriage annulled because he wanted to stay Catholic and be able to take communion because he really embraced it and stuff. And so we were talking, and he said, "But I go to a really progressive Catholic church," which kind of strikes me as compassionate conservatism, a progressive Catholic. He said, so this priest was saying that the teaching of the loaves and fishes is not a miracle of making something out of nothing. It's that everybody always had a hidden catch of a little bit of food because you couldn't just stop at the local 7-Eleven and pick up a 6-pack of pop and, I think I'll get a burrito and a piece of pizza. Oh, and I get that second free. You had fairly long distance, so they always carried somebody. And he said everybody shared of their abundance. And I said, so I told my brother, I said, so you think that's less of a miracle of people sharing their little bit with each other than it is for them to make it something? I think that's a bigger miracle to get human beings to actually share. So the interesting thing is when they talk about, so when Robin does a meditation here, just because I know her, she'll usually push the silence to 3.5 minutes. And if I do the meditation, I usually go to about 2, and you can already start seeing people a little bit fidgeting. When you start, I usually know it's time to stop the silence when you start hearing the coughing and you see the people checking their watch and, they're fidgeting and stuff. That's enough of the silence. Their silence was 15 minutes minimum. And everybody was happy to do it. So I used to remark at Golden Valley when Robin was youth ed director, she'd have the little ones as low as like 4 years old sitting in silence for 5 minutes. And they were just almost angelic. Yeah, they were angelic, just sitting there in the silence, perfectly still. And I'd go downstairs and people couldn't take 2 minutes because we're not trained in it. The Fillmores were trained in that silence. And their services, in my mind, were more like a YOU meeting than a traditional worship service that you would see at a traditional church. So a YOU meeting would start with some joy songs. You get the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where, so then they do a reading, and then there'd be an extended meditation, and then it would be more of a conversation rather than a lesson, more of a inviting in dialogue, which was a YOU meeting, rather than a traditional service of sit here and let me feed you. And I don't like this anymore because I'm not being fed as if people are supposed to feed you. So, which is interesting because it all comes around full circle, because the millennials want more of that type of service. They love the spiritual practice. They love the singing, the songs, and they really like being able to be engaged in a dialogue, not sitting passively listening. So we call them full circle. So, all right, we're just going to blunder through because it's pretty close to. So their goal wasn't to start a church. Their goal was to teach the principles of practical Christianity. And the idea is this isn't, sometimes when you go to seminary, especially traditional seminaries, and you wonder why these people come out and they're not ready to be ministers, because it's so academic. It's all theory. And people tend to want stuff that relates to them, not a theory about something or an exposition on something about historical critical that happened 10,000 years ago. One of the reasons why I think Joel Osteen is popular, or not Earl Warren, he's a Supreme Court Justice, Rick Warren, is they talk about practical things that you can put in practice today. If you do this, wrap through their own theology. So the Fillmores thought of themselves more as teachers rather than preachers, teaching practical Christianity that you would take and put into practice. I had one of my ushers who came to, and her mother, who came to my prayer workshop a few months ago. And then she came up and she said, on a Sunday about a month ago, says, I think I'm finally starting to get it. I said, what? She said that these are actual tools to put into place to use. And if you do, things start changing. I said, great. How long have you been coming here? 2008. Not bad. That's good. Some of us are a little hard-headed and it takes a while. Like Charles. Start using them and eventually they'll start working on you. They want to teach practical things that people would put into their lives. When I do Keys to the Kingdom, especially the ones who have never done it before, people go, oh man, this stuff works. Or somebody will say, but I'm on fixed income. I don't get any extra income. Okay, just be open. Oh man, I got this check in the mail, or I got this happen. I wasn't, it's just be open. So, and they continued to study and learn. So they were, one of the things I like to say is we open ourselves up to be both student and teacher. So they were constantly studying, constantly going to, it's the Unity way, go to another workshop to learn one more thing. Like there's one more thing to learn. So.
Well, every time you hear it, you're in a different place.
Right.
Right. Hear it.
Right. So especially new people in Unity, that's why we try to provide a lot of different things here, is new people they're like hungry to hear this stuff and they want to hear it in multiple ways so they can try and integrate it. And so they didn't teach abstract theory, but practical principles that they themselves lived. So they walked their talk, which I think is one of the criticisms of Joel Osteen right at the moment. People don't necessarily think that he's walking his talk because he lives this pretty opulent lifestyle. And they say the same thing for Rick Warren. The counter to that is, why shouldn't he if he's working this principles?
If we believe in an abundant God, why not?
Yeah.
Look how many people he has in his congregation.
Well, the thing I point out with Rick Warren is he buys 90% of his income from the church. I said he lives off of speaking engagements in his book sales. That's where he generates the income. Would you tell Stephen King he can't live in a nice house because he generated income from a bestseller? Stephen King would probably laugh at you and then sick a demon dog from hell on you.
Yeah, Christina.
Perhaps they shouldn't be judging to begin with, huh?
Right. Yeah. So, well, and typically it's people outside who want to make somebody else wrong about what they're doing instead of focusing their attention where it probably needs to be, which is on themselves.
Right.
And I always challenge people to go within rather than seek validation from them. Charles liked to use, they said he used the Socratic Method, which is question. For every answer you come up with, 2 questions are generated. Have you keep deepening your understanding. And then take it out and put it into practice and then come back.
I think a lot of people, and especially in today's world, want the Cliff's Note version.
It could be.
You know?
And one of the attracting forces of, and I'm separating evangelical from fundamentalism. They're 2 separate branches of Christianity. Some fundamentalists can also be evangelicals, but not all evangelicals are fundamentalists. So, but one of the tracks on evangelicalism, one of the attracting forces is that it gives you an answer in a very complex, oftentimes seemingly chaotic world that is spinning out of control because it is expanding so fast because the world's speeding up, because evolution is quickening. I now have an easy answer. It tells me if I just believe this, then everything's okay, and that takes what is primarily a giant mystery and makes it into a simple thing. Whereas in unity, like I'd say, this isn't an easy religion because there's no easy answer. You know, some people say unity is easy because you can believe anything you want, and I say unity is hard because you have to believe what you believe. You can't believe it just because somebody tells you it. You know, you have to believe it yourself.
Not a lot of people are going to be in prayer 6 hours a day.
Right. The character in the Dean Koontz book I'm reading, Odd Thomas, says that his discovery is that the world's such a great mystery and so much is unknown that you can't possibly grasp it. And so the world tries to make it real simple and easy because it's the only way you can get through day to day.
So
it's the only way you can get through to point A to point B is to just make it simple and say, oh, this is it. This is all there is. Because to think about the grand mystery and the little girls who are moving my stuff around yesterday, just too much to even fathom. Or people come and visiting in your dreams telling you stories about Native American Indians stealing poor children, you know, just too big to wrap their head around. So the interesting thing was, because he was such a prolific writer, that for the first 20 years, he didn't write. Oh, I was on the right one already. I'd gone too far. So he didn't write for 20 years other than his magazine. His first book was actually written in 1909, which was actually a compilation of articles he wrote for Unity magazine called Christian Healing. That's actually his first actual book. And many of Charles's books were not written as books. They were written as a compilation of other writings. So interesting. Christian Healing was the very first, back when SEE was called CEP. It was the first class I took from Unity in 2000, 1999 maybe?
2000, 2001.
So, well, no, we weren't married yet. So 2000.
So early 2000.
Yeah. So the minister who taught it was a man named Reverend Festus Umuyomjego from Nigeria.
What?
Reverend Festus Umuyomjego. Whatever.
Whatever, yeah.
From Nigeria. He got into ministry because he was a nuclear engineer, and he heard his mentor, when he was younger, had gone off into the bush from the village to die, and everybody thought a lion had eaten him, and he came back healed, and then went on a course of study to understand what it was that healed him when he should be dead and should have been lion food. So we're talking back in the 30s. And that was his teacher. So Reverend Festus was very much a old school unity guy. And Christian Healing, as Charles' first book, was his favorite book. And he literally would get up on the desk, jumping up and down, and I would understand literally maybe 1 out of 6 words. Still to this day, when I talk to him, I understand maybe 1 out of 6 words, and totally got what he was saying because it was so spirit-filled. I could not tell you a word that's in Christian Healing, but I understood Christian Healing. So it's really moves, and I think that's where Charles was, is to move away beyond the intellect and get into what the teaching is, that the teaching's in there. So, and that's the first place I learned about Schrodinger's cat, because he was a nuclear engineer. He told us about Schrodinger. You know Schrodinger's cat, right?
Only for the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, it's only from the big. So Schrodinger's cat is, a guy has a cat, and he puts it in a box. And in the box, there's 2 buttons. And whatever, if you press one button, the cat gets a pellet of food. If it presses the other button, he gets gassed and killed.
Oh,
So the question is, that Schrodinger asked, is the cat alive or dead? And the answer is yes.
well, yeah.
Because we're the creator, and not until you have decided what the cat is, has the cat actually become that, because it's a quantum universe. That the result of the cat in the box is not fixed, it's fixed by what we think. Of course the cat's alive, because when we kill a kid, you pick it up and the cat will be alive. Of course the cat's dead, because the cat's stupid and it's just going to randomly press buttons. And
So the theory is that the cat is alive and dead at the same time,
Yes.
and the only way you know for sure which it is
by lifting
by lifting the box. And
the cat is alive and dead, both at the same time.
It was interesting because not long after that was when quantum physics determined they actually got proof that the observer affects the observed.
Yes.
I know about that.
Yes. And that's if you think you see a wave in energy, it's a wave. If you think it's a particle, it's a particle. So what am I going to see? Yes. So Course in Miracles, Unity, and quantum physics all meet at the same place, which is, what's the answer? The answer is
Yes.
what's the question? Well, then it becomes what's the question you want to ask? So, but the answer is always yes. So, all right. That's it. That's it for the day. Who wants to pray us out? Donna, pray us out.
Okay, I'll pray us out. Loving Spirit, thank you so much for this time that we have to come together and spend in learning and in learning one another. And thank you for the knowing that you're always guiding us to our higher good and to our own creations. And for these things, we say thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
And so it is.
So we let it be.
Yay. See ya.
Oh, Lordy.